All right, so today we're going to be diving deep into European veterinary education. You had shared a fascinating research study from July 2024, and it really digs into, what helps vet students succeed beyond just good grades.
Yeah.
It really gets into kind of like, how they learn,
Right.
how they handle stress, and how those things connect.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see what factors influence student performance.
Yeah.
Especially in such a demanding field like veterinary medicine.
Absolutely. And this study uses something called the vet test, which sounds pretty intense.
Yeah.
What is that exactly?
So it's a comprehensive exam. It covers the entire veterinary curriculum.
Wow.
And it's actually developed by a group of leading European vet schools.
Okay.
Just to assess student knowledge.
So not just like a pop quiz on canine anatomy.
No. It's pan-curricular.
Gotcha.
So meaning it covers all the core subjects in veterinary medicine.
Okay.
From surgery to animal welfare.
That makes sense. This study also delves into two main learning approaches. It talks about deep learning and unreflective learning.
Yes.
What's the difference between the two?
So deep learning is really about understanding the material, connecting concepts, and thinking critically about what you're learning. So it's like you're building a mental framework where everything fits together.
Yeah.
Unreflective learning is really just relying on memorization without necessarily grasping the deeper meaning.
Oh, yeah.
It's surface-level knowledge.
So one is about connecting the dots, and the other is about just collecting the dots.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it.
Okay.
And the study found a really strong link between these approaches and performance on the VetRepos test.
Yeah.
Deep learners scored significantly higher.
So how you study really does matter. Now, let's talk about burnout, something I'm sure every vet student is familiar with.
Well, yeah.
The study mentions two key aspects of burnout: cynicism and exhaustion. Could you elaborate on those a bit?
Of course. So cynicism, you can think of that as maybe feeling disillusioned with your studies.
Okay.
Maybe questioning their value or just feeling a sense of detachment from your work.
Right.
Exhaustion, I think we all know what that is.
Yeah.
It's that feeling of being completely drained, both emotionally and mentally, by the demands of vet school.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I imagine both of those can really impact a student's ability to really even just learn effectively.
Yeah.
Did the study find a direct link between burnout and lower scores on the VetRepos test?
That's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
They didn't,
Okay.
but they did discover that burnout is very strongly connected to unreflective learning.
So burnout might not tank your scores directly,
Yeah,
but it could make you more likely to fall back on these less effective study habits,
exactly.
which could then impact your performance.
Right. It highlights just how interconnected these factors are and how important it is to address burnout in vet school, not just for well-being, but for academic success as well.
It's all connected now. This study involved students from 7 different European universities.
Yes.
Were there any challenges in comparing data from such diverse student populations?
Yes. So, for example, one university had a much higher proportion of younger students.
Okay.
So the researchers really had to make sure that that variation didn't skew the results.
So they leveled the playing field, statistically speaking.
Exactly. They wanted to make sure the findings were robust and not influenced by the differences in the student populations.
And speaking of student populations, the study also mentions a significant gender imbalance with a majority of female participants.
Yes.
Did this limitation affect the research at all?
It did, in the sense that it limited their ability to draw strong conclusions about potential differences, in learning styles and burnout between the male and female students.
Makes sense. Now, I know the researchers used a specific statistical model to analyze the VetRepos scores. Could you give us the big picture takeaway from those analyses without getting too technical?
Yeah. So, as you might expect, VetRepos scores generally increase as students progress through their program.
Okay.
Makes sense, right? The more you learn, the better you do. And they were also able to confirm that deep learning were strongly linked to higher scores.
So the more you learn, the better you do, and how you learn makes a big difference.
Exactly.
What about the relationship between learning approaches and burnout? What did the analysis reveal there?
So there they highlighted a significant correlation between unreflective learning and both cynicism and exhaustion.
So it seems like there's a connection there. But did the analysis provide any insights into thought processes or behaviors associated with each learning style?
Yes, they did. So the study used a questionnaire called How You Learn to gather information about students' learning approaches and their experiences. And one interesting finding was the importance of seeing connections between subjects.
Okay.
Students who scored high on deep learning often reported that their studies made them think about things from multiple perspectives.
So they weren't just learning facts in isolation.
Right.
They were seeing the bigger picture.
Exactly.
And understanding how different pieces of knowledge fit together.
Yeah, that's a hallmark of deep learning.
On the other hand, students who lean toward unreflective learning, they often described feeling like they were just memorizing bits and pieces of information without really understanding how they connected.
Right, almost like trying to solve a jigsaw puzzle without the picture on the box for guidance.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And this lack of connection, it can be incredibly frustrating.
Oh, yeah.
And demotivating.
Absolutely.
Which could contribute to those feelings of burnout.
Yeah, it can make studying feel like an overwhelming and meaningless chore.
Now, in addition to the How You Learn questionnaire, the study also used something called the School Burnout Inventory, right?
Yes, that's right.
What did this tool reveal about how vet students experience burnout?
So the School Burnout Inventory, or SBI-9 for short, focuses on 3 dimensions of burnout: exhaustion, cynicism, and inadequacy. And interestingly, the inadequacy dimension didn't strongly emerge in their data.
Interesting. So they focus on just cynicism and exhaustion.
Yes.
Which aligns with how burnout is often defined in the context of like work and things.
Right, exactly.
And what's fascinating is that they found a very strong correlation between unreflective learning and both cynicism and exhaustion.
Yes.
This reinforces the idea that how students approach learning it can significantly impact their overall well-being, and not just their grades.
Absolutely. It's not just about academic performance. It's about the mental and emotional health of future vets.
And that brings us to, I think, the burning question.
Yeah.
Does burnout lead to a less effective learning style?
Right.
Which then affects performance, or is there another factor at play?
Yeah, that's a great question, and hopefully future research can shed some light on that.
Yeah, I think it's time to move on to the discussion section of the paper and see what conclusions the researchers drew from all of these findings.
Sounds good to me.
Let's dive in.
Okay. One of the first things they acknowledge is this was a cross-sectional study.
Okay.
So it means it's a snapshot in time.
Gotcha.
So to really understand how these learning approaches burnout and performance, how they interact and evolve over time, we need longitudinal studies.
So instead of just seeing like a single frame of a movie, we need the whole film to really understand the story.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The researchers also point out that exam scores, while important, don't tell the whole story of study success.
Right.
There's so much more to being a good vet than just acing tests, right?
Absolutely. Clinical skills, communication, ethical decision-making, empathy. These are all crucial aspects of veterinary practice that you just can't capture on a written exam.
Right. It's about nurturing these well-rounded vets who are not only knowledgeable, but also compassionate and able to connect with both animals and their humans.
Exactly. It's about training skilled and empathetic professionals who can handle, the complex challenges of veterinary medicine.
This study also seems to highlight the importance of collaboration between veterinary schools.
Yeah.
Developing and administering a pan-curricular test, like the vet repos, across multiple countries, that's no small feat.
It's really a testament to the power of collaboration and shared resources.
Yeah.
Working together allows vet schools to learn from each other and improve educational standards across Europe.
Now let's talk about the questionnaire data. The researchers analyzed individual responses to the How You Learn questionnaire to see how they related to deep and unreflective learning.
Okay.
Were there any specific questions that really stood out?
There were several. For example, students who strongly agreed with the statement, "Ideas and perspectives I come across while studying make me think about things from all sides." Those students tended to score higher on the deep learning scale.
Okay.
And that really captures the essence of deep learning, engaging with the material on multiple levels and thinking critically.
It's not just about absorbing information passively. It's about actively wrestling with it.
Yes.
And exploring different perspectives.
Exactly. On the other hand, students who agreed with statements like, "Much of what I've learned seems no more than unrelated bits and pieces," they often scored higher on the unreflective learning scale.
That feeling of disconnected information, like a puzzle with missing pieces, seems to be a hallmark of unreflective learning.
Yeah.
And as we've discussed, can really contribute to burnout.
Precisely. It can make studying feel like an overwhelming and meaningless chore.
Now, I know the researchers also used a statistical technique called factor analysis to confirm that the school burnout inventory was accurately measuring cynicism and exhaustion. Without getting too technical, could you explain why this step was important?
Think of it like organizing a toolbox.
No.
Factor analysis helps us sort the tools, in this case, the questions on the burnout inventory, into their proper compartments based on what they measure.
So it's about making sure you're using the right tool for the job and that the tools are all working as they should.
Exactly. In this case, factor analysis confirmed that the questions on the burnout inventory were indeed measuring those two dimensions of burnout, cynicism and exhaustion.
And what did they learn about how these two dimensions relate to each other?
So they found a significant correlation between them, which makes sense. Like, you know, feeling disillusioned and cynical about your studies can certainly contribute to feeling emotionally drained and exhausted.
It's easy to see how one could feed into the other, creating this downward spiral.
Exactly.
Now, I'm curious, did the researchers find any differences in learning approaches or burnout based on which university the students attended?
You know, that's a great question, but unfortunately they weren't able to explore that fully due to the smaller sample sizes from some universities. That's definitely an area that warrants further investigation.
So we still have some unanswered questions about how different learning environments might influence these factors.
Exactly. More research is needed to understand the nuances of how individual universities and their teaching styles might impact student learning and well-being.
The researchers also acknowledged the limitation of not being able to directly compare male and female students due to the gender imbalance in the study. What are your thoughts on that?
It underscores the need for more research specifically focused on gender differences in learning approaches and burnout among vet students. There's a lot we still don't know about how gender might influence these experiences.
And understanding those differences is crucial for developing effective support systems that cater to the needs of all students.
Absolutely. We need to create a learning environment that empowers all students to thrive, regardless of their gender.
Now let's address, I think, the big question that emerged from this research. Does burnout cause unreflective learning or vice versa?
Right. It's like the chicken or the egg dilemma.
It really is, and unfortunately, this study can't definitively answer that question.
Right.
That's where I think the need for longitudinal studies comes in.
Exactly.
By following students over time, we can start to untangle the causal relationships between these factors.
It's like having a time-lapse video of a plant growing. You can see how the different parts develop and influence each other over time. Which gives you a much deeper understanding of the process.
Now let's shift our focus to the bigger picture. What are the implications of this research for the future of veterinary education?
You know, I think it highlights the need for a more holistic approach to supporting vet students. You know, it's not just about academics, it's about fostering a learning environment that promotes well-being, resilience, and a deep love of learning.
So it's about nurturing the whole person, not just the student.
Absolutely. We need to equip future vets not only with the knowledge and skills they need, but also with the emotional intelligence and resilience to thrive in such a demanding profession.
And that means taking burnout seriously and developing strategies to prevent it.
Yes, burnout is a real issue in veterinary medicine. And we need to equip students with the tools to manage stress and maintain their well-being.
The researchers also emphasized the importance of understanding the mechanisms linking burnout and learning approaches. What exactly do they mean by that?
They're essentially saying, we see the connection, but how does it work? What are the specific thought patterns, emotional responses, or behaviors that link burnout to less effective learning?
So it's like figuring out the inner workings of a machine. Not just observing whether it's running smoothly or not.
Precisely. And understanding those mechanisms can help us develop more targeted and effective interventions to break that cycle of burnout and unreflective learning.
For example, if we know that burnout can lead to difficulty concentrating, we can teach students mindfulness techniques or time management strategies to help them stay focused.
Exactly. It's about giving students the tools they need to navigate the challenges of vet school and thrive both academically and personally.
Now let's talk about what the researchers recommend for future research. They seem particularly interested in longitudinal studies, as we've already discussed. What other research avenues do they suggest?
They highlight the need for what they call person-oriented studies, which focus on understanding individual differences in how students experience and cope with burnout.
So recognizing that burnout doesn't affect everyone in the same way. And tailoring support accordingly.
Exactly. It's about moving away from that one-size-fits-all approach and acknowledging that different students have different needs and coping mechanisms.
Like personalized medicine, but for mental and emotional well-being.
That's a great way to put it. And it reflects that shift toward a more individualized and holistic approach to supporting student success.
The researchers also call for more research on the role of gender
Yes.
in shaping learning approaches and burnout experiences. Why is this so important?
Because we know that gender can significantly influence how individuals perceive and respond to stress, how they approach learning, and how they interact with their environment.
So it's about recognizing that men and women might navigate vet school differently.
Right.
And tailoring support accordingly.
Precisely, ignoring those differences could lead to ineffective or even harmful interventions for certain groups of students.
It's about creating an inclusive learning environment that meets the needs of all students, regardless of gender.
Exactly. We need to make sure that all students feel supported and empowered to succeed.
Now, this research was conducted by a team within the Vet Repos Consortium,
Yeah.
a group of European veterinary schools collaborating to improve veterinary education. How does this study reflect the broader goals of the consortium?
I think it exemplifies their commitment to evidence-based practices in veterinary education.
Okay.
By conducting rigorous research like this,
Yeah.
they're generating valuable data that can inform curriculum design, teaching methods, and student support services.
So it's about moving beyond tradition and intuition.
Right.
And grounding veterinary education in solid research.
Absolutely. It's about ensuring that vet schools are producing graduates who are not only competent, but also resilient and compassionate and well-prepared for the challenges of the profession.
And that benefits everyone, animals, vets, and the communities they serve.
Precisely. It's about creating a better future for veterinary medicine as a whole.
This study has given us a lot to think about. I'm curious to hear what final thoughts you have on the research and its implications.
It's been a fascinating deep dive. This research really underscores, I think, the complex interplay of factors that contribute to success in vet school and beyond.
It definitely challenges that notion that it's all about grades, it seems like. Developing a deep approach to learning and managing burnout are just as crucial, if not more so.
Absolutely. It's about fostering that love of learning and that commitment to well-being.
Yeah.
Those are the foundations for a successful and fulfilling career in veterinary medicine.
So if someone listening to this is considering applying to vet school, what key advice would you give them based on the insights from this research?
I'd say first and foremost, cultivate that deep learning approach. Don't just memorize facts.
Yeah.
Strive to understand the why behind the what, make connections between concepts, and think critically about the material.
Engage with it on a deeper level. Don't just skim the surface.
Exactly. Second, prioritize your well-being from day one.
Okay.
Vet school is demanding, and burnout is a real risk. Develop healthy coping mechanisms, set boundaries, and don't be afraid to seek support when you need it.
Self-care is essential, not a luxury.
And finally, build a strong support network.
Yeah.
Connect with your classmates, find mentors, and lean on your loved ones. You don't have to go through this journey alone.
It really does take a village to raise a vet.
It does. And remember, a rewarding and impactful career in veterinary medicine is within your reach if you approach it with curiosity, resilience, and a compassionate heart.
Those are words to live by now. Before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought to ponder this research, focused on how learning approaches and burnout impact exam scores. But what about the real world? How might those factors influence a vet's performance in clinical practice?
That's the burning question, isn't it? Does a deep learning style translate to better clinical decision-making? Does managing burnout lead to more effective communication with clients and more compassionate patient care? These are all crucial areas for future research to explore.
It's a reminder that veterinary education isn't just about preparing for exams. It's about shaping the kind of vets we want to see in the world. Vets who are not only knowledgeable and skilled, but also compassionate, resilient, and dedicated to the well-being of animals and the people who love them.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And on that note from Vet NeuroJar, keep those minds-inspired hearts light and tails wagging.